Hey everyone, thanks for dropping by. And if you're new, I'm your host, Jonah. Welcome to the Blue Collar Enlightenment Show, where we learn new things every episode through conversations with guests from all around the globe. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with the journey. Enjoy the episode. All right, here we go. Welcome, Tyler. I appreciate you coming on and taking the time and talking to me. This is going to be an exciting episode, one that have been looking forward to, and we've had to reschedule a couple times. Life has kicked us in the butt, but here we are, and we're going to do it. So, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate you having me on the show. I'm excited about this conversation too. One of my favorite things to talk about is just kind of the myriad of health and wellness, and also just kind of, I'm on a little bit of a war path, if you will, of kind of helping people redefine what fitness means, because I feel like it's just such a, a bad notion in most people's minds when they think of the word fitness, right? So I'm sure we'll get there in this conversation, but my name's Tyler. A lot of people online probably know me as Coach Tyler. I guess you could call me a movement expert. I hate that term at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, I was an overweight kid who had parents who thought diet soda was a health food, and felt terrible about myself, and ended up getting some pretty bad injuries when I was younger as I started to try and embark on, changing the way my body looked. And as a result of that, when I was 17, I got hit by a car, trashed my knee, broke my femur. I went back in the gym afterwards and was trying to do these traditional kind of bodybuilding movements, right? Like leg extensions, things like that. And basically everything hurt. So in a lot of ways, I got real lucky. I had this guru living inside of me that said, when you move poorly, you're in pain. If you don't take care of your body and maintain strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination, you start to feel like an old man, even though you're like, in your early 20s and whatnot. And I ended up getting injured again years later after I had already made a lot of progress with regard to rehabilitating that first injury and gaining more strength and flexibility and whatnot. And that one was even worse. I was doing gymnastics and I came down from a twisting move and I blew my knee sideways and tore my ACL, MCL, LCL, quad, meniscus all in one shot. And that one took me the better part of a decade to get back to a place where I had the range of motion and the strength that I had prior to that. So my life has been one of just getting just kicked, just kicked down as hard as life could give me. And then I just say, hey, I'm going to figure out how to change this. And by virtue of that, I've been very lucky enough to find a passion in teaching people how to move their bodies better so they feel better in their bodies. And that's a result of just me doing it for myself and just traveling around the country, learning from the best, physical therapists, athletic trainers, coaches I possibly could. And then going on to start several different fitness businesses and have the opportunity to train with thousands of people now and really put a lot of these theories to the test. And then over the last 3 years, I've been working on this project called WESHAPE, and it's mine and my wife's project that we put together. And the goal is to change how and why we exercise. And I think that that's an interesting mission statement, because it gives people that question mark in their mind of what do they mean by that, right? So I don't know if you want to go there next, but we can go whichever direction you want.
Oh, we could definitely go there. I mean, it's just a free flow conversation.
Cool.
So you've taken this path and you've gotten to the point now where you have WeShape, correct?
Yeah.
And WeShape, I've been playing around with it. Um,
Cool.
Tell us a little bit the direction you're wanting to go with WeShape and how you're trying to innovate the way that we work out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll give you a little more backstory into the fitness businesses that I've been a part of to kind of tee up that part of the conversation. So, like I said, I got really into fitness, trying to rehabilitate myself. Um, that started with me becoming a personal trainer and training people out of my garage. And I really enjoyed doing that. I played by a different set of rules when I was doing that. I noticed that when I was trying to work at a gym, most personal trainers focused on like, hey, let's get as many clients as I can get, and they'll come in and they'll do a few sessions with me, or maybe one session a week or something like that. And the majority of the personal trainers at the gym are basically like ex-failed athletes or people who are relatively fit for the most part and got a weekend certification. And so it would drive me nuts, man. I would be at the gym, I watch somebody put their client on a treadmill for 15 minutes and they would stare at their phone. Then they walk up through the machines, do 3 sets of 10, on each machine, and then they'd be like, bye. And the majority of what the client was getting from that experience was not education on how to move their body better. It wasn't that the coach teaching them how to feel embodied and learn how to move better when they're doing their workouts. It was mostly therapy for them. You see them, they just want to talk to their personal trainer about their problems and woes and things like that, and the personal trainer listens. And so the majority of the great personal trainers that I saw in terms of their clientele size, they weren't actually great personal trainers. They were just people who were good at listening and had a an enjoyable personality at the end of the day. So that drove me nuts. I didn't want to do that. I changed my approach. I said, okay, I'm going to do personal training, but I'm only going to work with people if they work with me at least 3 days a week. And I want a minimum commitment of 6 months. And when they show up, I'm going to take their cell phone away. I'm going to focus them exactly on what I'm trying to get them to do and feel. And I'm going to start to understand their psychology. I want to understand if there's somebody who needs a little bit of a harder style of motivation, or if there's somebody that needs a little bit softer style of motivation. But whatever it is, I wanted to produce like dramatic results for them. And that's exactly what I did. I started producing really incredible results. People would often stay with me for 1 to 3 years, and they'd walk away like absolutely transformed, both mind and body. And that's the type of coaching I like to do, is really, really integrated coaching. And that was fun, but I wanted to scale it. I wanted to figure out how I could get my concepts out to more people. So I started a group training program, and that went on to become 4 locations in our hometown. We had hundreds and hundreds of clients. I had 16 trainers working underneath me. This is all kind of my early 20s as well. So I was having a good time with that experience, but I had a business partner that didn't really see eye to eye. I had a notion of, how do we create systems for this? How do we make this more efficient? And he was a little bit more old school, like, let's show up at 5 a.m., let's go home at 8 p.m. And I was like, why? If you can automate things, if you can, create better systems around it, like, why do you have to be there to do the elbow grease work? So we just didn't see eye to eye, and I ended up selling the business to him. And at that point, I went online and said, okay, let's build some fitness programs online. So that was about a decade ago when we first started selling products online. And we started with products that teach people how to improve their strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination for their lower body, their upper body, their core, et cetera. And we're really successful with it, So for a good 8 years, we got really good at it. We started building a publishing company that basically sold supplements and cookbooks and workout products and everything. And the way that my wife says it was really eloquent. She said, our Instagram life was incredible, right? We were successful by all of the standard measures, right? You want to be successful in having a career that gives you some sort of passion, and you make some money, and you got abs and all this crap. But we were just looking at each other at the end of the day saying, first of all, does this really bring true fulfillment? And we were happy with a lot of the stuff that we did, but we noticed that we had just kind of jumped on the industry bandwagon, and the norm of the fitness industry is this. And this is something I really hope that people listening can take away. The norm of the fitness industry is, you should feel shitty about yourself. And the reason why is because you don't look like this ideal body that we all idealize, whether it's men or women. And so you should do our workouts in order to change the way you look so you can feel good about yourself, right? And we became aware of this about 4 years ago, and it started to feel gross, right? We were playing that game. We were in the middle of the game, like, lose belly fat in 6 weeks, and like get this and get that. It's all this kind of like quick fix, kind of aesthetically focused things to get people to try these workouts. And while we were getting people to lose weight, and we were getting people to do the workouts and feel good, like, there's a lot of positivity to that. What I noticed was, even the people who did succeed, quote unquote succeed on whatever their goal was, maybe it's losing weight or whatever, they still weren't happy. They didn't feel good about themselves intrinsically. And I want to highlight that again. When we tell people that you should feel shitty about yourself unless you achieve this ideal body standard, and then they go achieve that ideal body standard, there's this notion that we'll feel good about ourselves. But if we never learn to feel good about ourselves from within, then we'll always be dependent on something outside of ourselves to feel good about ourselves, right? And so when people would achieve that body, they would think they're going to be happy, but they weren't. It was like, now I got to fix this. Now I got to do that. Now I got to do that. It's this culture we live in of more. I'm not perfect, so I have to judge myself to create motivation, to create the ability to go after that. And all of that is rooted in extrinsic motivation. It's rooted in losing yourself and looking for validation from others, right? On top of this, what I got really annoyed with in the fitness industry is that the biggest and most popular products in the world that were selling workout programs, they weren't rooted in biomechanics or science. They were just rooted in great marketing, right? And luckily we got good at marketing and we had good products, but we thought to ourselves, how can we step ahead of everybody else? And so when I look at how to changing how and why people exercise, right? The why is, how do we get people to stop focusing on extrinsic motivation and seeking validation outside themselves? So in other words, Showing up for their workouts is an act of self-judgment, right? I look in the mirror, I hate the way I look, I should go do a workout, right? That's the wrong kind of fuel. Because no matter what, even if you achieve the body that you think is the standard, you'll still look at yourself in the mirror and hate yourself, right? So we want to flip that on its head, and we want to flip the industry narrative away from that self-judgment to create motivation to trying to create intrinsic motivation, which is the ability to say, wait a second, I'm worth it. My body is my temple. I should get after it, not because I hate myself, but because I actually appreciate what it can do for me and what it has done for me. And so when you cultivate intrinsic motivation, you have a significantly longer success rate than when you have extrinsic motivation. And this is my personal belief is this is why people end up on this loop, right? Where it's you get a little bit of results and then you go back. I tell them it's one step forward, one step back. Most people do that in the fitness industry for decades, and then they get upset because they never made any progress. Well, it's because you're stuck in that need for external validation to fuel that motivation. So that's the why people exercise, right? Then the how goes back to that reality that most people's programs, they're just not well designed or thought out. The reality of it is if I want to give somebody the best workout, it's got to be the best workout for them, right? And so that means that every person is going to have a slightly different workout routine. Sure, you can find people who all agree on fundamental movement patterns of the human body that need to be done to create strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination so you can have freedom to move your body in the real world. But then you have to have variations of those movements that are appropriate for every individual, right? So most people go too far too fast, and that again fuels that one step forward, one step back that people get stuck in because we go a little too much, we get injured, we burn out, whatever may happen, and then we end up having to start back at the baseline. I have a different belief system, and it comes from those years of dealing with these injuries. It's if you aren't currently doing workouts and movements and things like that, and you jump in too far too fast, you're going to fail. So what we want you to do is we want you to start out with really basic things, right? Really simple things, and develop your workout as a habit around taking care of your body, doing simple things, and walk away from your workout for like a little while, just being like, oh, that was easy, right? I barely broke a sweat, right? Build those habits. And then the way that we designed WeShape was every single workout is customized to each individual user, and we use technology to accomplish this. And then as the user follow along to their workout, they have the ability to scale the movements, the difficulty of the movements, up, down, or keep it the same, just like they would in real life as a trainer. So the thought process in my head was, how do I take everything that I've learned over the years as a trainer, put it into an application that can give somebody a better experience than their local personal trainers, right? For a tiny fraction of the cost. And if you think about it, a personal trainer, what do? They sit you down, they ask you a bunch of questions about your goals, they look at your capabilities, your flexibility, like where you're currently at. Then they start you out on a workout based on what they think you should be doing. And then if you're in the middle of the workout and you're like, that's too hard, they change the movement. If too easy, they change the movement, right? So that's all we tried to do is reproduce the experience of working with like a trainer one-on-one to create a customized journey for each individual user. And then pair that with positive psychology rather than this extrinsic need for validation to create the momentum that people need to be able to start and then keep going. And that's the real key, keep going. A lot of people can start and they've started and stopped, dozens of times. It's the experience of that. If we can create that intrinsic motivation, you don't have to worry about needing to find that motivation because you're just like, dude, I feel good when I work out. I know that my body feels better, and I know that I'm deserving of feeling good in my body. So I don't know where we're going to go from that point right there, but that's kind of what we talk about when we talk about we're trying to change how and why people exercise. How customization focused on movement rather than like pumping your muscles and burning calories. Why? Because you're worth it, not because you hate yourself.
So if you were to take a guy like myself who works in construction, I work where I'm lifting heavy valves and pipe and I'm throwing stuff on my shoulder and carrying it 500 yards. So if I was to come home and work out a heavy workout, would that be more hurting my body than helping?
Yeah, so I mean, this is great. One of the things I like to say at WeShape over and over again is we are not here to be your guru. We're here to teach you to be your own guru, right? And what that means is this. People ask all the time, how much should I work out? Should I do more? Should I do less? Yada, 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 right? The answer is, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you feel when you come home from work, right? And using that feedback to then give your body what it needs. So as an example, you might wake up one day, go in, do a nice day of labor work, and come home and be like, oh, I still got some energy in me. I'm going to go do some, movements to feel like I can, kick my own butt, right? And feel good about it. I want to get this energy out, right? Then you might have another day where you're totally burned out. And on that day, maybe you come home and the natural inclination is, I don't want to do anything. But you're like, well, actually, if I do like 15 minutes of recovery work or, some stretches, some mobility drills, things like that, not only am I going to get more benefit from the hard work I just put in with my body, right? But I'm also going to reduce the chances of getting injured, and I'm going to maintain my flexibility at the same time, right? So I think there's just this notion of, again, if we can teach you fundamentally how to move your body well and give you the tools to move your body well, and then give you the tools to understand how to do workouts that are appropriate for you and stretches that are appropriate for you, then depending on kind of where you're at each day, you can come at it and say, I'm going to do something for myself. And more than anything, what I'm trying to get at is the most important habit is checking in with yourself and saying, what do I need? And then building the habit of doing something for yourself every day, right? And that doesn't matter if it's, I came home and I meditated for 20 minutes, or I stretched for 20 minutes, or I went for a walk and listened to my favorite book for 20 minutes, right? The craziest thing is how few people have the habit of doing something for themselves, right? We constantly say yes to everyone else, our family, our friends, our job, or whatever, right? And we know what we probably want. Deep down inside, I think everybody knows what makes them feel good, but they ignore that. And we're punishing ourselves. We're saying, oh, I'm not worthy of taking care of me, so I'll just take care of everybody else to distract myself, right? So I know that's a little bit of a sideways turn from what you asked there, but I think the most important part is developing that keen relationship with yourself. Jonah, what I mean is that most people approach their fitness as a way to change their body, and the way they're thinking about it is pumping muscles and burning calories. It's energy systems to change the way they look, right? And what I'm trying to get people to do is realize that fitness is your ability to connect with your body and move your body the way you want it to move, in line with the way it's biologically supposed to move. So teaching people to move their bodies better is the foundation of everything that we do at WeShape, because if you learn to move your body better, then you just get to have movement freedom for longer. And so even beyond the question of like, what should I do for my workouts? Like if I come home and I'm tired, what pops into my head too is, do you know how to move your body well so that when you're at work and you're doing that labor all day long, you're not putting wear and tear on your body that's going to end up screwing you later on in life, right? Because if you know how to bend over and pick something up with good form, you have full activation to your core, your glutes, your hip structures, you know how to do all this stuff, you have the requisite flexibility to do your job, and you do that mindfully, then you're going to be able to go to your job, and your job actually might make you significantly stronger, make you live longer, make your body feel better. But if you go there and you lack a little bit of core strength or a little bit of connection with some of those core muscles, your glutes are asleep, right? You have flexibility restrictions and whatnot. Well, then you're going to end up like a lot of these guys do in these hard labor fields, where they just slowly start to deteriorate. I mean, you've met these people, right? I was in construction for 6 years when I was younger, so I know
I see
this.
them every day. Every day walking around job site, limping around, and everything like that. I do not want to end up like that. And
Yeah,
so,
but then check this out. Check this out. Hold on, let me ask you a question. Right. So you see a lot of people limping around. It's probably 90% of the people you meet, maybe 95 or 8% of the people you meet in construction. But you've probably met those few guys, right? And I've met them too. One of them was my boss. And they're like 60 years old and they're in fantastic damn shape. And they don't have many aches and pains. They're doing just fine. Now, the difference between that person and everybody else is that person probably just was born naturally moving well. They know how to keep their body in alignment, and they know how to biomechanically move well. The reality is, most people do not know how to move well, and they need to be taught how to move well, and nobody's fucking teaching it.
right. And you were saying how we focus on how people focus on how they go into the gym, just wanting to bulk up and things like that. And I see it personally myself as I want to uh, make my body safe from that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And like you're saying,
absolutely.
uh, I want to make sure that if I bend over the wrong way, I'm not going to be out for the next two with a pulled back. Or if I,
Yeah,
kneel down, I don't twist my knee when I stand up, things like that.
exactly. Yeah,
And we focus so much on the outer things that it that's what that negativity comes from. And the first time we talked, like I was saying, how I motivate myself is try to take that negativity and prove it wrong with the positivity of actually doing it. And that's something that people need to get past, is actually doing things, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
Because I
Well, you
see
know
a
what's
lot of
funny
people.
though? I'm happy you say that. I'm happy you say that because this is a conversation. I had a conversation last night with a good friend of mine. We were talking about this, how there are so many tools out there that can help people like improve their lives. They can improve their ability to be present, find peace. They can improve how they feel in their bodies, their health, etc. That are absolutely free, right? And people still don't do them. And the typical thing is, well, that's because they're lazy, right? And that's what someone who gets motivated by shitting on themselves says, right? Because they go, oh, well, they're lazy. I'm not lazy because I look at myself in the mirror and I go, come on, quit being a bitch and let's get after it, right? And then you get after it and then people praise you and then you stay stuck in that cycle. And here's the thing that I think people need to realize, right? For every one person that uses negativity to motivate them, right? 99 other people are going to use that negativity to motivate them and they're going to believe the narrative. Okay? Like, does that make sense, right? So if everybody out there, if 100 people go out there and they're going to go do their workouts and every single one of them is motivating themselves through self-judgment, one person might actually use that fuel properly and use it to transcend that insecurity. And 99 people are going to go in there and that will be the belief that limits them, right? And so it's really easy for a lot of people who have used that successfully to say, well, why doesn't everybody just use it successfully? And I've watched so many people fail. And it's because you're creating a self-fulfilling belief, right? And so I think I'd much rather try to figure out how to take everyone, including you, including myself, right? I had to do this process myself. I used to fuel myself through self-judgment and through insecurity. And it got me really, quote unquote, far based on societal expectations. But guess what? I had the house, I had the car, I had the family, I had the vacations, I had the body, right? And you know what? I was still fucking miserable. I was still miserable inside. And it wasn't until I recognized that all of those things were just me trying to fill this hole inside. I was just trying to get external validation, see me, love me, appreciate me, right? And it wasn't until I realized that that was the game I was playing that I went, okay, hold on, I don't want to play that game anymore. Instead of me trying to fill the hole, let me feel whole right now without all that shit. And you know what ended up happening? I ended up fucking 10 times happier, 100 times happier, 1,000 times happier than I was before. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. I'm a better business person. I stopped doing things to make people feel bad, started telling people they should feel good about themselves and come from that place. I sold all my shit, right? I downsized my lifestyle despite the fact that I have means to do otherwise. And this is the protest I'm kind of making is I would love nothing more than WeShape to become a huge company. Maybe it becomes worth, hundreds of millions of dollars and we're helping all these people. And guess what? I'm still going to live in a 2-bedroom house. I'm still going to drive a normal car and I'm not going to fucking go out there and buy all this fancy shit that I used to try and use to fill the hole. Right. And so I think that we need to make this sexy in the world. We need to make someone who's driven by purpose to serve other. That needs to be the highest value of our humanity instead of serve ourselves so that we can get more and more and more and more and more. Because it doesn't work, man. It doesn't fucking work. I have friends who are vastly more successful than I've ever been, and they get a private jet. You know what they say? Oh, I can't wait for the next one or the bigger one, right? It's a never-ending pit that will swallow you whole. And so I know we're going down more of a macro theme of life here, but I really think that most people who try to use self-judgment to create motivation, it's so short-lived. It's like very, 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 very short-lived. It's one thing to say like, you can do better. I know you've got more inside and really believe that conviction and start to prove to yourself that you have more capacity than you think you do. That's one thing. But you ugly fat piece of shit, you should go out and do a workout, right? Like that's not going to get you anywhere because ultimately you kind of believe that you're what you're saying you are. And that will create self-sabotage. You won't be able to stick with something on that. So I'd much rather have people walk by the mirror, notice themselves judging themselves, pause and say, wait a second, let me say something I appreciate about myself. And then if I think about doing something for my body, let me think about it from the perspective of I deserve this. I'm worth it. This is an act of self-care, not an act of self-judgment.
Right. And I think it takes time for all of us to come to that point of enlightenment in our lives to where the negativity within around us, because that's something that when we're young, we see all these movie stars, all these rappers, all these musicians, all these rock stars up there with these bods, these nice looking women, these badass cars, these nice houses. So it becomes the norm. It becomes that's what I want to be. But
Yeah,
we should all remember that's like 0.1% of every, and they're not happy. Because look at
they're
all
not.
these guys when they get 60, 65, they're not happy. They're very grumpy, mean old
That's right.
people. And so
That's
when
right.
we're able to turn on, take that negativity and say, look, man, within ourselves, and be able to take that step back and be like, I've already proved my self worth. Okay, so you need to shut up and take a back seat because I
Yeah.
know where I'm at and I know where I need to be. And when we can harness that ability, or we can soar, and it's a beautiful
And
thing.
beyond that, this isn't even about proving to yourself that you're worthy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do anything to be worthy. It's about
No.
changing your belief systems, right? People think that their life is ruled by open choice. But the reality is, most of us create conditioned patterns in our neural pathways before the age of 7. And they're usually based around I don't feel seen, I don't feel loved, I don't feel connected, I feel rejected, I feel like I need to. And then from that goes, I need to go out and prove myself to the world. And we go out there and we try to prove to ourselves to the world in other ways. Some people get there and they're still miserable. Some people never get there and they think they need to get there to find that joy and happiness. But ultimately, what I'm trying to highlight here is that the majority of those actions are conditioned habits that are installed in us when we feel insecure in our youth, right? And it wasn't until I started doing that work, examining my beliefs, asking myself, why is it that I'm further along than I could have ever imagined 10 years ago, and it's not enough, and I need more, and I feel insecure, and nothing in my life is as good as I thought it would be if I had X, Y, and Z, right? All this success, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until I started doing that deeper work. Why am I miserable? Oh, well, I'm miserable because I think these things are going to make me happy. I think my physique is going to make me happy. I think my success is going to make me happy. My car is going to make me happy, right? And I think that some people out there need to experience that for themselves and recognize that it'll never work, right? But I'm trying to make this sexy, right? Like it will not make you happy. Trust me. Trust me. Trust me.
I'm
Trust me.
there with you.
Please, like, yeah, build the habit now because that's the reality. Build the habit now of just looking at yourself in the mirror. And if a lot of times people think about, oh, we want to take you from like self judgment to self love. That's too big of a step for most people. So I tell people all the time, if you can't find any aspect of self-love or anything that you appreciate about yourself, wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, oh, thank you, body, for breathing all night while I was sleeping and letting me live one more day. Thank you, heart, for beating for all these years to keep me going, right? And start with the things that are so grounded and simple. Someone else is in the grave, right? They didn't get to see another day. Every day, people don't wake up, and you did, right? So start building that awareness around the pure like luck and joy of just being alive and being able to take a breath, right? And the more you connect with that, and the more you find joy and peace and presence in that moment, in that ability just to be present with yourself and appreciate yourself, the less you're going to look for those outside circumstances and the more you're going to be able to show up for yourself without the need for motivation, right? I don't need workout motivation. I'm just like, my body feels good when I move my body. And so I'm going to go use the tools that I've built over the years to go work on strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination, which I believe are the fundamental attributes to being able to move your body with as much freedom as possible for as long as possible. And that's it, man. I want to be 100 years old. I want to be able to play with my grandkids, my great grandkids. I want to be able to go for long walks and hikes, and I want to be able to experience life as best I can. And it doesn't matter what my body looks like. I don't care if it's thicker, thinner, whatever it may be, right? I just want to be able to do things that I want to do with my body. And then the way it looks, it'll take care of itself. We're all different anyways. That's what's so stupid about these ideals is you show somebody up there, it's like everybody's bone structure is different, everybody's muscle structure is different, heights, natural body weights, etc. It's like just show up for yourself. Work on your body from a level of taking care of yourself and let the rest take care of itself, man. And then build that self-confidence, right? That's what's really attractive in the world is true, authentic self-confidence, right?
Yeah. And like you were saying, I mean, it's like taking it the most simplest things and training
Yeah.
your mind to be able to get that self gratification out of everything, even if it's
Yeah.
paying a damn light bill. It's like I was
Yeah.
able to pay the light bill. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I got power next month. We have to take the little things that we do every day and get the self gratification to be able to train our minds to be able to motivate ourselves and turn that negativity off and say, screw you, I'm better than that. I know I'm better than
Yeah.
that. And it's the little things that we do in life that affect the big things, just like working out, just
Fair.
like getting up every day and going to work, just like even the down to the food we eat, going from McDonald's to packing your own lunch. It's the little things we do that can change and affect the way our mind thinks. It's
And underneath that, Jonah, though, this is I'm gonna hammer this in 1,000 different ways until everybody hears it, right? Underneath that, though, is there's this decision that you have to make.
mm-hmm,
And the decision is rooted in beliefs, right? And so let me ask you a question. If my belief is I hate the way I look, and so I need to go out there and make better decisions, right? Even if I make all those better decisions, what's my concrete belief? That I don't like the way I look. I don't like myself, right? And that's what keeps people trapped. They're coming from a place of, you know, disliking themselves fundamentally at the core. That's their belief system. And that belief system basically says, I am not worthy. I am not worthy. We've learned that when we were kids because our parents didn't offer us unconditional love. Guess what? They did the best they damn could, and nobody can offer unconditional love unconditionally, right? They can just offer their best step. And so, how do we learn that? We offer it to ourselves. We learn to offer that to ourselves. And how do we offer it to ourselves? We pause and we start showing up for ourselves from a place of self-love, right? And if that means I'm going to pause when I feel stressed out and take 5 deep breaths into my belly and just try to relax, right? And do that because you feel like, oh, I can do this. I'm worth doing this for myself, right? Then you can start showing up in those little increments. And so you start changing the belief system from I'm acting out of the need for external validation because I don't feel worthy to I'm acting for myself because I do feel worthy. Like I genuinely at this point believe that the majority of people who struggle to get started doing something, whether that's taking 5 deep breaths or following along to a workout on YouTube or making a good food choice, underneath all of that is low self-worth, right? And I think that if we can call that out and people can start just being aware of that, then if we can be aware of how unkind we are to ourselves, then we can stop in those moments and start repatterning it. And at first it'll mean that I'm unkind to myself 100 times and I caught myself, 10 and I changed 1, right? And then a month later, I was unkind to myself 100 times, I caught myself 50 and I changed 10, right? And if you're consistent with this for months and years, before you know it, you're kind to yourself and you believe that you're worth it, right? Because the only reason you believe you're not worth it is because society told you you're not worth it. Because you formed those belief systems, right? Nobody's born hating themselves. Nobody's born thinking that their body sucks, right? We're taught that. We're taught that because of mainstream media, mainstream marketing telling you exactly what I talked about in the very beginning of this podcast. You should feel shitty about yourself, so buy our product so you don't feel shitty about yourself anymore, right?
yeah, because when do you like you have kids just like me. I
Yep.
remember when my kids were 1, 2, and 3, they were happy as can be.
Mm-hmm.
They still are. I mean, they haven't got to that point where you know my daughters are coming into that point where the teenage years, and so I'm trying to help mitigate it, you know. But
Yeah.
you know, but I see it in the kids coming up, the lack of motivation, that self hate, and it's all because of what society has brought upon us with these you need to be like this, you should be like this, and instead of saying we've gotten away from just get out there for 30 minutes and play with your kids, go do stuff like that, get out and walk the zoo. We've gotten away from that, and now it's just
Yeah.
cell phones in hands, like my son.
Yeah.
I love the kid, but dadgum, my boy cannot go 5 minutes without getting on a cell phone. And so,
Well, you know what's even harder about that, Jonah? Look at adults. How many adults can go 5 minutes without getting on a cell phone? I think this is my protest side coming out again, but to me, I think in a decade or so, we're going to look at these screens in a much different way, and we're going to say, hey, there are aspects of technology that are incredibly useful, right? Like at the end of the day, what WeShape's trying to do is create a product that can democratize personal training, to the masses. And that's a use of technology that I can stand behind and say, hey, this is going to help people feel better in their bodies and about their bodies, coming from that place of self-worth and movement education, so that you can like live long and happy life, right? And then there's things that are trying to just keep you on your damn screen for as long as possible, right? And I think that's so hard because since we are a fundamentally capitalist society, and if you are a screen-based product, like a software product or an app or anything like that, you're gonna get the best results by keeping people on your app as long as possible, right? And so you're gonna optimize your app's experience for taking away time from someone else. And one of the things I'm most proud of about WeShape is that I am not doing this for the money. I don't make anything. It's a self-funded startup. I actually put a lot of money into this myself on this project, and I don't actually care. Before we started this project, my wife and I sat with each other and said, if we could do anything and got nothing from it, what would we do? And we made the decision to build this company. And at the end of the day, I'm really proud of when we have the opportunity to leverage some of these tactics that some of these applications use to be able to keep people on there longer. We usually make the decision not to do it, right? So a great example is if I got people to do more workouts in my product, they'd probably stay longer. They'd probably, their membership would be more extended, et cetera, right? But that's not really what people should be doing. I don't want people to do the max amount of workouts. You know how many times I get on one of our coaching calls? We do like live coaching calls. Somebody says, oh, I've been doing like 5 workouts and I feel like I should do more. And I'm like, maybe you should do less, right? Maybe you should give yourself a break. Maybe you should take 2 weeks off, right? Like, I'm like, people need to be so much more kind to themselves and realize like it's simple consistency over the long term that gets you the results that you're after. It's not the super hard pushes that you do in the short term that are going to get you where you want to go, right? So I think screens are yeah, man, it's a tough one. It's a one where, again, if we learn how to make conscious capitalism that is in service to the end user, and the goal being like more happiness, more health, more wealth from the perspective of not more money for myself, but more connection with self, right? And more connection with self and more awareness of self, so that other people can find their purposes and go out there and do the same thing for others. Like, that's what we need to be focused on. And if we're focused on how many hours can I get somebody to stay on my application so that I can get as many advertising dollars as possible, oh man, it's not going to be good. Like, people really need to pause for a second when they're on these social media apps, especially, and realize you're the product, bro. You are the product. Your eyeballs and your attention are the product at the end of the day, and they're trying to optimize to keep you on there as long as possible. And I can't get away from this notion. I wake up every day and I think this, and my wife thinks I'm crazy, but I'm going to die one day, and everyone else on this call is going to die one day. And if you hit your deathbed and you think you're going to think to yourself, God, I wish I spent more time on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever your screen drug of choice is, you are sorely mistaken. You are sorely mistaken. So use it for things that are useful for you, and be aware of when it's sucking you in and using like addictive mechanisms to try and keep you trapped and using you as the product at the end of the day.
yeah, we definitely need, I use my cell phone. Obviously, I got to be on it for the podcast stuff. I'm doing a lot of research, but I'm using mine for knowledge. If we could push more of a narrative of knowledge and things like you're preaching, of that sort, and get away from all this crap that's on, it would be a lot better. But
Yeah.
until we get to that point, it is what it is, I guess.
It is what it is. I mean, it's the world we live in, right? The world we live in is filled with screens and social media. It's filled with advertisements and billboards of beautiful people who don't even look the way they look on the billboard of the advertisement. Like, it's not even real life for the people on the damn billboard at the end of the day, right? So, it's just people need to I want more than anything people to become aware of the world that we live in and recognize that most of our suffering is coming from a place of buying into the belief systems that we inherited, right? We inherited these belief systems from our parents, from our parents' parents, from dead people, right? A lot of the beliefs that we have that keep us miserable, we inherited from dead people. You know what I mean? And so how do we pause for a second and say, what makes me happy? Spending time with my kids, spending time with my friends, not judging myself, moving my body, spending time in nature, eating delicious food that doesn't make me feel shitty afterwards, right? Like, let's find the things that bring us authentic joy and stop doing the things that bring us temporary satisfaction but long-term suffering.
Like eating golden lobsters.
Oh
You know what I'm saying? Trying to push for a
my God.
$400 lobster and eat that, I mean, go to, you know, cook your own lobster, do things like that.
Yeah.
We've got a little off topic from working out and stuff.
That's all right, but it's all the same. Like, that's what the thing about WeShape is we're using working out and we're using fitness and we're using, I like to call it movement more. We're using that as a vessel for helping people connect with themselves and learn to appreciate themselves. And I think it's a beautiful vessel because it's so easy to talk to people. We run these 30-day feel good challenges that we do for free for our social media following. And I'll get on like a Zoom call and we'll start talking about these concepts. And my favorite thing to do is say, hey, who here has stepped on a scale, looked down at a number, and felt shitty about themselves? And it's everybody, right? Everybody pretty much in the world has probably done this at one point in their life. And I try to bring awareness in that moment. This is a machine that puts a number in front of you. Like, and you feel bad about it because you have some idealized number that maybe you were when you were like 15 years old or some shit like that, and you think you're supposed to hit that again, right? And what the craziest thing is too, if you take surveys where you take people in different body sizes and you put them in front of people and say, which one do you think is the most attractive? It's not the ideal bodies for the most part. For the most part, some of these ideal bodies, like, oh, they're too buff or they're too ripped, right? If it's a man, like a lot of women like a man who's fit and looks fit, but like maybe they're not like ripped to shreds, right? That's like, whoa, that's too much for me. And like most men, they're not going to like somebody who's rail thin and doesn't look like they can do anything with their bodies and move their bodies well, right? So even the people that we think we idealize, it's like a false notion in the first place, right? So I think at the end of the day, people just, I want to just offer the world something that says you can love yourself no matter who you are right now, and then you can show up for yourself from that place, and that's going to carry you so much further than hating yourself and trying to show up from that place.
Yeah, what was it? That fad, the last fad was the dad bod. No, it's still going on. The dad bod right now is the fad.
Is the fad.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems to change all the time. I remember when it was, in the early 2000s, they wanted buff, ripped dudes, and then it turned into dad bods. And what was it back in the 90s? It was something else, but it changes all the time. What
Well,
media? What media?
You're highlighting something amazing.
It's a fad, and yet
it's a fad.
Actual reality of people is just like they have their own. They know what they want, and they know.
Think about all the women. Think about all the women in the 90s who watched like Friends or some show like that and achieved that body, the real super slender, look. And what's happening now, right? If you don't look like Kim Kardashian, like you're out. You know what I mean? So like, how do those women feel? They were the winners in 1999, and now they're like, oh, I need to get bigger butt and all this different stuff like that, right? So like, you're pointing out something so important is that even these ideal bodies change every decade or so. And so it's completely ridiculous to measure yourself against those standards. And even beyond that, like one thing I just kind of felt when we were talking about dad bod, this bod, bod, right? Like, can we just get that out of the equation in general, right? When I talk about fitness, I'm not talking about energy systems. I'm not talking about how much cardio can you do to burn fat. I'm not talking about how much you can pump your muscles so that you can have, more sculpted biceps or legs or buns or whatever, right? I'm talking about how much flexibility and strength do you have in every joint, right? Because if you want to feel good in your body, it comes down to having strength and flexibility in your joints. And when I say balance and coordination, that means the ability to have a mind-muscle connection to do the movements you want in the way that your body is biomechanically supposed to do them, so that you have low risk of getting injured and a high chance of doing lots of things that most people can't do as they get older, right? So forget about the bod. Let's all just like let that go. And if you can develop flexibility and strength and balance and coordination across your body using movements that are useful to you, like picking stuff up, like hinging through the hip, like hinging through the knees, like pushing, like pulling, right? If you can build strength and flexibility in those positions, your body will change naturally, and it'll change into what it was supposed to be able to be functional. So we got to change that ideal from even thinking about the body to just thinking about how far can I go at improving how my body feels, right? Which is strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination across all the different joints. And this notion, this underlying notion of of conscious quality movement. That's the other thing I hate about the old notion of exercise. To me, when somebody goes on a treadmill and watches Oprah for 30 minutes, right, they're not connecting with their body at all. There's zero connection with their body. And that's so many people. We walk around with this head attached to this thing that has like so many sensory inputs, and it stores feelings and wisdom and all this other stuff. And we just put a blocker on it. We never connect with it, right? And I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to movement, not exercise is mindless, right? It's no pain, no gain. It's push yourself further than you want to. It's, watch TV show while you're doing cardio. Movement is stop everything and focus on what it is that you're doing and try to achieve quality movement for whatever movement pattern you're doing in the way that the body's supposed to do it, which is probably going to involve you focusing really heavily on, whoa, do I feel this in this muscle? Do I feel this in this muscle? Where's my flexibility restrictions? Is my core active, right? And the more you practice stuff where people are teaching how to move your body better, then my favorite testimonials we get from people are not, oh, I lost 20 pounds in the first 30 days. It's, oh, I went to go pick up the dog food bag at Costco that I normally have to ask someone to come help me pick up. And I just hauled that thing up and tossed it in the shopping cart, no problem this time. I'm like, that's what I want. I want people to have the freedom to move their bodies for as long as possible. And I think if people focus on that rather than their aesthetics, they're going to be so much happier.
So how much were you able to play with your kids until you got wore out? Things of that nature
That's right.
is what we need to be looking at. It's not can I lift 300 or can I bench press 350 pounds when I'm starting at 150 in 2 weeks? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
can I how many reps can I get of that? Can I get to my 10?
Yeah.
Do I have to stop
Yeah.
halfway through to take my break? Things of that nature. And I was going to bring up a point, but I lost it. But
I would say, and even on top of that, people's notion of the movements that we should be doing, like we hear bench press a lot because it's a movement that gives men those big pec muscles that, we like, and it's this armor stuff like that. But like, how often are we laying on our back and pushing up like that, right? I tend to shy away from movements that don't serve a function in daily life and move a lot more towards movements that do serve more of a function in daily life. Because, another way to highlight this, I think, is really cool question for people to ask themselves, right? So if you fast forwarded your life and you were 80 years old, okay, which one would you rather choose? Would you rather choose the 80-year-old who's lean and has a six pack and is cut and all this stuff, right, that society idealizes, but you have flexibility restrictions, maybe you have bad posture, your body aches a little bit, when you go out for a walk, things start to hurt, right? But you look good. You look great compared to all the other 80-year-olds. Or would you not care what your body looked like, but you could go for a walk pain-free. You could play with your grandchildren. You could go up and down the stairs pain-free, right? Like one of the biggest gifts I was ever given was getting two major injuries in my younger years, because both of these major injuries put me in a place of recognizing what it feels like to be 40, 50, 60, et cetera. Like my second knee injury, man, I had so much arthritis in that joint that I would have to stand up after like eating dinner at like a restaurant. Say we sit down for like an hour and a half. I'd have to stand up and stretch my knee for like 2-3 minutes before I could take a step. It was so painful. And I had this experience of going like, oh, this is what people feel like when they're 60, 70 years old and they're downright miserable. And so like, how do we help people learn how to move their bodies better and regain that range of motion, that strength in those joints so that they can do things without experiencing that pain? And I think most people, when they're younger, it's just there's too much naivety around what it feels like to be in a body that wasn't taken care of. But if you can go fast forward into that body that wasn't taken care of, brother, you will get up off your butt right now and do something for yourself. And then the hopeful truth is at that point, maybe you do something that's actually going to serve you for the long run and not something that's rooted in aesthetics. Because again, almost all the programs out there are purely focused on changing the way you look, not changing the way you feel.
yeah, and that's definitely why I wanted to bring you on and talk to you, is because this world that we find ourselves in of trying to be more lazy, and kids ain't even walking no more. They pretty much have little, what are those things called, the hoverboards. They ain't even got to walk no more. They can just roll down the road. And drive-throughs and DoorDash, and we don't even have to really, we ain't even got to get up to get our food delivered to us. We could be sitting on
Yeah,
our couch and DoorDash could walk right through the door, hand us our food. We ain't even got to move. I mean, in a
that's so,
world
yeah, so
that's
true.
becoming so lazy, it's fresh to know that, we're still pushing at least to make sure people are moving and wanting to be active.
Yeah.
It,
Well, and I
it's
think
a
that's the
it's a
important part.
fact.
So the word lazy, I hear that, and I always go back again to self worth, right? Like we're quote unquote not doing things for our bodies because we don't value ourselves, right? And so I prefer to say that our society has encouraged us to be sedentary, and this is why it's more important than ever to value our bodies and take care of our bodies, right? Like people take better care of their iPhone than they do their bodies. That's the damn truth, right? Like they put a case around it, they charge it every day, they polish the
Mhm.
screen, right? They like save up to buy like a new one, right? And then we
Yep.
go take our bodies and we just ignore the crap out of them. We get in pain and we don't have any tools to fix it, right? But I mean, that's the other thing is that we just need to make this, we need to make this information more available. We need to make the understanding that when you focus on movement, when you have tools to give you to help you gain flexibility, strength, balance, and coordination across all of your joints, like those are the tools people need to be able to polish their screen, right? To be able to do the things that will make their bodies feel a lot better. So I don't know if you want to do this, but I would love to dovetail. I know we're talking about motivation and mindset a lot, which is fantastic. But we could talk about the actual nitty gritty of like what does it mean to do functional training that's actually going to serve you. I'd love to talk about that too, because that's really a lot more of my specialty. A lot of our content we post on social media is a lot about movement education. It's like, hey, if your shoulders feel funky, try this. And then we get a lot of people trying these movements and like, oh my God, thank you. Like, I can't believe I just did something that took, 60 seconds and now my posture is better and my shoulder stopped hurting. So I think that a lot of what I want to do is just give people tools and bring awareness to the fact that like there's a lot of stuff out there that people don't know how to do. And if once they learn how to do it, now you're your own guru and you can make yourself feel good.
Yeah, I think we got past the mental part of everything. I think that was a
Yeah.
good
Quit
good
shitting on yourself and
Yeah,
start
quit
appreciating
being an
yourself, right?
asshole to yourself and take yourself for granted, damn it. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're walking, living, breathing, do the thing. But yeah, let's get into some nitty-gritty because um so how do you so if you have a hands-on in training, what's some of
Yeah.
like the basic workouts on the first step that you're going to take?
Yeah. Okay. So I love this. I'm going to try to break apart kind of the movement philosophy of WeShape, which is just really a lot of my movement philosophy that I've gained over the years. Again, working with like physical therapists, athletic trainers. And just a quick backstory. One of the things that allowed me to learn this information, because I'm not like a typical, school trained type of person. I don't go to like college and get a bachelor's degree in kinesiology and stuff like that. I basically graduated high school as quickly as I possibly could. Extra early because I got some credits from the local community college. Went on to become a rock drummer who worked construction for the better part of 6-7 years, and then realized that career wasn't going to pan out, and decided I wanted to do something else I loved, which was fitness at the time, and so kind of pivoted that direction. And throughout that process, how did I learn this stuff? Because what's interesting to me is I can have a conversation with somebody who has a doctorate in physical therapy, and we can be speaking the same language, but I didn't go to school the same way you did, right? I went to the school of hard knocks, right, which was destroy your body and figure out how to put it back together, and then take those steps, distill them, offer them to other people, try stuff out, see what worked, keep doing what works, stop doing what doesn't work, right? So at the end of the day, what that's all led me to is a series of steps that the body needs to take in order to feel good, right? So my center is this: how do I feel good in my body, and how do I have as much movement freedom as possible with my body? Okay. And so what does this look like? For the beginner, we have to start somebody out with building a strong foundation. I already said this, where most people do too much too fast. They take one step forward, one step back. And so what does that mean? A strong foundation means you have a connection from your mind to your muscles, and you have awareness of what that feels like. Okay. So if somebody, for example, has poor core activation or poor glute activation, the likelihood of that person having SI joint problems or lower back pain is incredibly high. Incredibly, incredibly high. Now, if you jump straight in to doing, some sort of glute exercise that everybody's popularizing, or some sort of core exercise that everybody's popularizing, but you don't have a mind-muscle connection where you understand what it feels like to properly activate those muscle groups, you'll be doing that movement, but you'll be using different muscles to accomplish it. Okay. So if I'm doing like a bridge lift where I'm lifting my hips toward the sky while I'm lying on my back and I'm thinking I'm working my glutes, but I don't know how to activate my glutes. I don't know what that feels like. I don't have a mind muscle connection. Well, I could be using my lower back muscles. I could be using my hamstrings, my quads, overusing my knee extension rather than my hip extension, right? And all of that is just going to make my problems worse. It's not going to make anything better, right? It's literally like a bad idea from the first place. So what we often do with people is we take them back to a level that feels so beginner that they're like, what am I even doing right now? And I'm like, trust the process. Just stick with this and go slow for the first month or two and slowly scale the movements up. So if we look at the way I approach these movements, it's two things. It's scalability, so having something that absolute beginners can do and having something that people who are way more advanced can do. And then it's making sure that there's a proper framework of intention behind each step of the way. Okay, so let's use push-ups for an example. This is a great move to start with because oftentimes when people start doing push-ups, they have poor posture. They don't have good core activation. They probably can't activate their chest muscles. They definitely aren't using their lats and their serratus, the muscles that actually stabilize the shoulder and keep them safe. And they don't have a lot of flexibility to bring their chest to the ground and push it back up. So if I tell somebody, okay, let's go do push-ups, and they don't have access to these muscles, they don't have the range of motion, they might get good at push-ups from what somebody sees from the outside. Oh, I can do 50 push-ups or 100 push-ups, but they're just putting repetitive use injury on their joints, okay? So what do? We start them at the bare minimum. We lie them on their backs. We teach them how to retract their scapula, hold their shoulder blades back and down. We teach them how to then activate their core, press their lower back into the surface so that you're lying on your back, so you're pressing your lower back, getting your pelvis in the right position. And then we have you do an air bench press. Literally nothing is in your hands. And all we're doing is, can you feel your chest squeezing at the top without your shoulders shrugging, without your shoulder blades coming out, with your shoulder blades coming back and down, and maintaining that core activation, right? And then when you bring your arms back, can you feel your lats underneath your armpits? Can you feel those pulling your elbows back behind you as you're coming down in that movement? So we're teaching you, what is it supposed to feel like to push your arms forward and pull your arms back, right? And if you can't figure out the right muscles to use for that, or you're using I can feel my chest, I can't feel this, then we have a lot of tips throughout the process on how to feel those muscles activating so that you can start building that mind-muscle connection. So all of our lower level movements, usually our levels 1, 2, and sometimes 3, are centered around building mind-muscle connection depending on the motor pattern and depending on the joint. So if it's lower body, it might be we're focusing on quad activation or hamstring activation or calf activation or glute activation. For anything, we teach core activation in everything because it's the root of pretty much everything that we do. And then for the upper body, it's learning how to use the bigger muscles that stabilize the shoulders and the smaller muscles as the final movers of the body. And as somebody goes through this step, they're going to start with mind-muscle connection. Then we're going to start adding movement, but usually with light resistance. So going back to the push-up, we start with this laying bench press in bed. Now, this is something you can do if you're 80 years old and in bed, and this is something that you can do if you're an athlete to repattern your mind-muscle connection, to rebuild that foundation that you need to make sure you don't get injured later on. From there, you say, okay, this is too easy. Once you feel the muscles right, this is too easy, let's scale it up. Now you're going to sit in a chair, you're going to put your hands on your thighs in a wide stance, and you're going to do push-ups on your thighs, actually using your core for resistance. So you're going to push against your thighs with your core like you're leaning forward, and you're going to feel all those same muscles working while you're doing this. Again, very simple for most people, but absolutely critical when it comes to feeling what it should feel like to do a push-up well, right? Now we go, okay, that's too easy. Now let's bring you up to a wall, and we'll do the push-up on the wall. And now we're actually practicing a real push-up through a full range of motion, but since we're in a standing position, this is going to provide very minimal resistance. So there's very low injury risk. And this is so useful. This is called progressive movement training. We're slowly increasing the sophistication of the movement by adding strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination, right? And over time, what the body's doing is not only getting stronger, more flexible, creating more balance and coordination, but there are massive benefits for your neurology. The more complex a movement gets, the more brain power you need. The more brain power you need, the more your body dumps this thing called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which actually is regrowing nerves in your brain to create new connections to facilitate movement. What people don't realize is as a baby, your brain's capacity to grow new nerves and neurons is facilitated by you sophisticating movement. It starts with you laying on your back, then you lifting your head, then you turning over, then you pressing up, then you crawling, then you standing, then you walking. That is actually fueling the brain's ability to create new neural pathways, right? So the more complex of a movement we end up working towards, the more we actually nourish our brain as well as our body at the same time. That's something that most people don't know. It's an amazing fact about movement and how it relates to the human body and the brain. So now we're at the wall. You're good at the wall. This feels good. Now we take a chair and we go on the back of the chair. So we're changing the angle, right? And as we change the angle from a vertical position towards a horizontal position on the floor, we're increasing the resistance of the movement. So you'd go from a back of a chair. If that feels too easy, then you go to the bottom of the chair. Then once you've got to the bottom of the chair, we bring you down to the floor, but in a kneeling position on your knees so that we're reducing the lever, which also decreases the resistance. Then we would go full push-up down on your toes, drop the knees, push up on the knees, right? Then we would do regular push-ups, usually half range of motion first, then full range of motion second. Then after that, we would add explosive power to it and start doing things like clapping push-ups, explosive push-ups, etc. So now you've seen a push-up progression that takes everybody. Like, doesn't matter who you are. You could be in a hospital bed and do these workouts. And you're starting with learning how to activate the proper muscles. And as we go through a progression of movements, it might be 10 different progressions, 20 different progressions. You're slowly building strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination. And these top level movements are things that, high level athletes are doing currently to be able to build their strength and power for their particular sport. So that's the philosophy, man. It's progressive movement training, slowly sophisticating movements that are useful to the human body, and doing it in a way that's rooted in making sure that we start with mind-muscle connection, then we start focusing on form, then we start adding range of motion, then we start decreasing the angle to create more resistance, then we start adding speed and power, right? And what most people do, they just jump right into the middle somewhere way too soon, too fast, and they don't even know how to activate their core properly, so they stabilize their back and don't hurt it, right? And I think that this is something that it's new information for most people, but if you go and talk to really high-level physical therapists, high-level athletic trainers, things like that, they're thinking in this way. They're thinking of sophisticating the motor pattern of their clients to improve the client's ability to move their body as freely as possible.
Boy, you have a very sophisticated way of going about it. I spent 6 years in the Navy. Okay, boot camp this was before it got a little bit soft. And so I remember going to do our workouts, right? And there was no, hey, let's go work on your form. There was fix your shit now.
Yeah. Who can do the most?
Well, yeah. So I'm just sitting there thinking in my head as you're explaining this to me. I'm like, our boot camp teachers, they wouldn't do anything like that. Those guys that were humping the ground, they would yell at those guys. There was no, you need to fix your form. There was, do it like this. They would get in your ear, and there was so many different ways people were doing push-ups, and
totally,
it's just funny. I go back and I think of everybody in their forms, and it's like, oh my God, some of those forms are so funny. So do you ever see some of them, you just kind of giggle in your mind a little bit as they're doing them?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the problem of becoming keenly aware of movement, right? And this is something that's interesting too, is like, I wonder why this isn't happening more. Like, even personal trainers aren't taught this. A lot of physical therapists can't really teach people how to move the way they're meant to. And what I've come to the conclusion of is, you kind of need two things in order to be able to teach movement, right? One is you need an awareness of the human body. So that is the muscular system, the bone system, the tendons, ligament system, and which way the muscles pull, so that you can understand if the shoulders are rolled forward, well, then these muscles pull it back, these muscles pull the shoulder blade down, right? So if you can understand the force vectors that these muscles create throughout the body, where they're attached to the bone and how they're attached to those bones, then you can start to map out, okay, if somebody's deficient this way, here's how we fix it by activating this here, right? So first you have to understand it. Then the second part is you have to have an eye. And this is the part where I feel like most people fail. I have met some of the most intelligent physical therapists, athletic trainers out there who have immense knowledge of anatomy, like so much knowledge of anatomy, way more than I could ever name in my life. And they'll watch somebody do like a push-up or a squat or something, and they won't be able to coach that person's form towards improving that. And it's always been weird to me. I'm like, what's going on here? And I think it's just certain people see the geometry of the body and others just don't, right? So I think that at the end of the day, this is more than just like, should we educate people on like what the body does? It's also, can we look at the body while it's moving and understand where it's not moving well? And why I'm saying that is, once you're able to do that, and I've spent 2 decades doing this now. Once you're able to do that, it's the most annoying thing that you have in your life, because basically every person walking down the street that you see, you're like, oh God, they got like internal rotation on their hip. Their knee's going to like get polished down on the inside. Their meniscus is going to start hurting here soon if it doesn't already, right? You see them go pick something up, you're like, oh, you're going to blow out your back, you're going to hurt your SI joint, right? You see their posture, you're like, oh man, you're going to have a lot of upper back, neck pain, etc. And it's like you want to just walk up to everybody and just give them like something, right? Which is why we do what we do through our social medias, right? Like, we post so much content, Jonah. Like I make like this quarter alone, we're going to try to post 1,000 pieces of content across our 4 social platforms every month, right? And it's just literally like, hey, if you have bad posture, here's a move to help you out. Hey, if you have tight hamstrings, here's a move to help you out. And it's just, the goal is like, can we just give you something that's really like low hanging fruit that you'll actually do like right now for like a minute or two, just to show you that all you need is the tools. And then once you have the tools, whenever you feel tweaky, whenever you don't feel good, you've got a tool that'll help you feel good in your body, right? Most people just have an empty toolbox. They don't have any tools to help them feel good in their bodies, right? And so I want to try to fill those toolboxes up so that people go, oh, wait, I remember that video I watched about how to stretch my hamstrings the right way, or, improve my posture, or relax my mind and body, or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's annoying. It's definitely annoying to have this, this awareness of people's motor pattern deficiencies. So yeah, but I'm doing the best I can to not just walk up to everybody and say, hey, you want to fix your posture? That'd be pretty scary and annoying, I think.
That's about like me walking up to Red. Hey, you want to hear about my podcast?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you start to learn, if you've done anything and you've been evangelical for any period of time, you start to learn that the best thing to do is be a shining example of what it is that you're teaching, and then teach those who are willing and ask you. And the moment you go out there and start trying to preach to everybody else, you'll have a long conversation that they'll listen to and they might be interested in, and then they walk away and it's just back to square one. It really didn't do much for the world. So I've changed my tune from trying to help everyone and change everyone to, I'm just going to be the best example I possibly can be, and I will help anybody who's willing and interested.
So do you keep up to date with like new technologies that, it just not even really has to be technologies, the new, like all the new stuff coming out in fitness? Do you kind of, glance over at it, maybe try it,
Yeah,
implement
this
some
is
of the new
this is
things?
fun. We can go here. This will be interesting. So there's a couple misnomers that I notice in the fitness industry. Okay, so I don't know how or why, but I tend to find these things like real early on, and then a decade or two goes by, and then they become like mainstream, right? And then everybody's like, "This is the greatest thing in the world." So I have this weird experience of having a lot of experience with something a long time. Like, so I was doing like body weight movements and calisthenics like late 90s, early 2000s. Kettlebells like 2003. Like all this stuff that kind of didn't become mainstream for 10 or 15 years, after that side of things, right? These movement progressions and stuff, it's still not, I don't feel like very many people are talking about it, but I think it's going to be one of these, at some point it'll be the fad, right? It'll be like movement progress. Somebody will make it some sexy marketing thing and make you feel shitty about yourself and tell you that you got to do their workout in order, to feel good about your body, right? So what's interesting to me is there are fundamental principles that I don't believe will change all that much, okay? And what does that mean? That means that almost every human body, there are some cases, obviously, if you're born a different way, and there's variations to all this, of course. I'm not trying to say that everybody has to do exactly like this, but the human body is really kind of supposed to move one way, right? And if we know how to move it the way that it was meant to move, it will last as long as possible, and we can do as much with it as possible, okay? And if we move it wrong, we'll get gradual repetitive use injuries, and then it'll eventually wear out, right? Now, does that mean that your body won't wear out if you move really well? No, it'll wear out eventually. Your body's going to slowly decay over time like anybody's, but it's going to do it a lot slower, and you're going to have a lot less aches, pains, and injuries, and you're going to feel a lot better and be able to do a lot more with your body throughout that process. So movement at its fundamental level, like what is your shoulder blade supposed to do? What muscles are supposed to activate when you put your arm over your head? How much range of motion is necessary to be able to do things in your daily life, right? Core activation, how to properly activate your core, like things like this. I don't think they're going to change all that much. So from a sense of technology, this is like we are the technology that's been sculpted over a million years of evolution. And if we understand the owner's manual of movement for our body, then we can feel as good as possible for as long as possible. Then there's this notion, though, that everybody comes out with these modalities, right? Which is like intervals or like this protocol or this equipment, right? Or, like this kind of stuff, right? And what's really interesting to me about that is oftentimes this is just like fad stuff, right? There was a moment where I got into kettlebells. This is the this is the best thing ever, and blah, blah, and kettlebells are better than dumbbells, and this is better than, there's all this like black and white, there's no like middle ground. And ultimately you realize these are just tools, right? These are just tools, and there's no better or worse. They're just a different tool for a different reason at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And so, while I try to keep up on whatever's coming down the pipeline from the people that I trust and that are really rooted in movement-centric education, which is typically the highest level physical therapists, athletic trainers, et cetera, I tend to find that most of the awareness of what's happening in the fitness industry right now is really like, it's not centered around movement. It's pretty outdated. It's mostly centered around bodybuilding. It's usually centered around tools or like, tips, tricks, and fads and things like that are going to get you from where you are to where you want to go. And what's even funnier too is a lot of the really good science, if you want to get down to like what programs work the best way to gain strength, flexibility, et cetera, a lot of the science of this was done in like the 70s. And it's just barely coming to the surface now. So there's this lag time with scientifically backed research that oftentimes takes decades and decades and decades before it comes to the population and people start talking about it as if it's like the truth and the reality. You know what I mean? So most of what people are doing right now is cardio for fat loss and muscle pumping for muscle gain for shape. That's literally it. And then the tools and modalities that they use, it probably doesn't really matter that much. You know what I mean? It's just different tools for different reasons. And I'm like, I don't care about any of that. I care about how is the body supposed to move, and do I have strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination through all of my joints, through the max range of motion, the max strength, the most coordination, the most balance, right? And I think that the more we focus on that stuff, the more we're just honoring the human body and how it was designed through a million years of recreating itself to be able to move in our environment as best it can.
So what type of like outside workouts would you have somebody implement, say like yoga or Pilates or, going to the swimming pool, things of that nature?
Yeah. I love this conversation too, because when we label something, we have this identification of it as like a bucket, right? And what I love about the word movement, and WeShape has a philosophy that's centered around inclusion. So I'll touch on that in a sec, but my own personal philosophy is movement. And so what does that mean? Does that mean I'm going to do some things that look like yoga? I'm going to do some things that look like gymnastics. I'm going to do some things that look like weightlifting and some things that look like hard labor. I'm going to do, like all kinds of different things. I just want to have as much movement freedom in the ways the human body moves as possible, right? When it comes to WeShape in general, we wanted inclusion, okay? And so inclusion on two levels. One, we've talked about the progressions that we have, and we talked about the push-up, but it's important to mention that we have about 27 different motor patterns that we focus on, each one with anywhere between 10 and I believe 22 different progressions. Okay, starting from I can do this in bed and I can't even sit up from bed, all the way to more difficult variations of that movement, and also honoring that focus on mind-muscle connection, then strength and range of motion, then more resistance and strength, and then adding more speed and power, right? Why we did that, why we focused on those movements, why we focused on exclusively doing body weight training instead of adding any equipment is I want an inclusion. I want somebody to have no excuses. I don't want somebody to be like, well, I'm traveling and I'm on my trip. I'm like, great, you don't need anything. All you need is a chair. There's usually a chair in your hotel room. You know what I mean? If you can't find that, then, grab a ottoman or a bed or, whatever.
If you're traveling and you're staying at hotels that don't have a gym, because every hotel has gym, so there's no.
That's true. That's even beyond that. Is that most hotels have a gym, right? Yeah, that's so true. But I also like with bodyweight training. What's really interesting is if we really when you're working out, really you're kind of working on one of two things. You're either getting better at moving your body intrinsically, or you're getting better at moving something with your body extrinsically, right? And there's no good or bad there. Both are useful in our world. But I feel that most people need to build a foundation in learning how to move their body intrinsically, and then actually serve the extrinsic portion a lot better. What I find is oftentimes people who do traditional weightlifting types of stuff, maybe bodybuilding programs, while you can sculpt a body that looks really good, can you do things that are useful and functional in real life? Man, a lot of them, if they don't focus on additional things like flexibility and movement quality, they're going to end up getting tighter and actually restricting their ability to do things in their daily life. So it's so important to focus on movement as the core of all this stuff. And the easiest way to focus on movement is to learn how to move your body better. And that's my sole focus with WeShape and our clientele is, yeah, I don't shit on weightlifting or kettlebells or this protocol or that protocol. It's all just tools for different reasons. But within WeShape, if I can teach you how to slowly progress from our level 1 movements all the way up or as high as you possibly can over the course of months, years, whatever it may take, on these 27 fundamental motor patterns of the human body, I promise you, you're going to feel good in your body. You're going to have strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination. You're going to be able to do the things that you want to do. And that's what we hear from our clients. It's like, I can't believe I spent decades going to the gym and sitting on machines and doing curls and, running on treadmills. And I was completely disconnected from my body and myself. I hated myself. And here I am. And like, my knees stopped hurting. I feel like I can go for walks again. I kind of like who I am for the first time in years. I feel like I'm actually worth it and I'm showing up for my workouts the same way I show up for brushing my teeth. I want to take care of my teeth, not because I hate the way my teeth look. You know what I mean? So,
Well, yeah, I mean, we go to the gym, and if you're just starting out and you ain't got a gym buddy, you see all these bodybuilders in there doing this crazy
yeah.
stuff. We're not them. We don't have the same
Yeah.
regimen. I don't have time to go to the gym for 5 hours and work on, doing 100 curls. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Okay. And plus,
No.
have you ever seen
No.
those guys move?
It'd be really tight.
It's they literally have to turn their whole body to look to the side.
Yeah.
They're
That's
doing
so
that
true.
movement. Their arms can't go past that because this muscle's so big that it's blocking. They can't go past it. I mean, I would rather be able to touch my ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you're pointing out something really important here, Jonah, and that is like, I chose the attributes of strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination very, very consciously, right? I have met some of the strongest powerlifters in the world and watched how they can't turn their neck over their shoulder, right? And I have met some of the most flexible, incredible, like circus acrobats out there and watch as they can barely like get through their daily life without accidentally hyperextending a joint and whatnot happening, right? So I've always found immense fascination with how do you build these attributes together, right? Because typically somebody who's strong is not flexible, and somebody who's flexible is not strong. Well, I'm 6 foot tall, 205 pounds. I can do the splits. I can do a gymnastic bridge like a little girl. I can deadlift 450 pounds and front squat, 305 pounds. I can do pull-ups with 100 pounds around my waist. I can bring my arms all the way back behind my shoulder. I can do all kinds of flexibility things that most people can't do, but I can do the strength things. I can do the balance things. I can do the coordination things at the same time, right? And so learning how to take the best of all these different worlds and bring them together and recognize that it is about developing strength in these motor patterns, but also making sure you have flexibility in those same motor patterns, right? Like if I can do a deadlift and lift heavy weights, that's great. That can serve me really well. But if I can't then touch my toes, right, as I operate through my daily life, it's not going to be useful. You know what I mean? It's going to be something where I go, okay, I can pick something really heavy up as long as it's perfectly balanced and right in the center, and it's got to be at this height and blah, blah, like that kind of stuff, right? But if I go to bend my toes, or I can bring my head down to my knees and my hamstrings have full range of motion, now not only can I lift stuff up, I can also, bend my body in the ways that it's probably going to need to bend at some point, throughout my life.
Well, good sir, I'll give it to you that you can still do gymnastic stuff because I'm strong enough and my flexibility, I can still touch my toes, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. No, people, it's funny because I get judged a lot, right? Like, because I have a physique that looks more like, I guess, probably a bodybuilder or like an athletic kind of person. And I'm a bigger guy, right? And so just people don't see that and think to themselves, you're going to be doing like a full back bridge with your arms fully extended, like a little girl does at a gymnastics studio. You know what I mean? Like they just don't see big people doing that or dropping into the front splits, in a pair of jeans. You know what I mean? So I think it's somewhat unique to a certain degree. I'm by no means like the best at any of this stuff. There's some really incredible people that I've gotten to learn from and follow, and some even become friends with over the years. And it's just more, proof that if you use the wrong framework around fitness, this is like, again, the how, right? If you're pumping your muscles and you're burning calories and you're ignoring movement and flexibility and strength and mind muscle connection, like all these things, right? Like it's just not going to serve you in the long run. Yeah. Again, you're going to have that 80-year-old physique that looks great, but you're not going to be able to put your arm over your head to be able to touch your ceiling if you want to. Or, when I say that, this may not sound useful, but maybe you need to reach up in your cabinets and grab something out of your cabinet real high. You'd be surprised at how few people can put their arm over their head in a way that actually feels good over time. They start compensating using the wrong muscles, or flexibility's off, etc. So, yeah, man, like, please just show up for your workouts because you appreciate yourself and because you're worth it. And when you show up for your workouts, practice movement. Don't mindlessly exercise, mindfully move.
Right. And, my motivation, because I do, I do have my regimen that I do, and I have implemented yoga within the middle of it. And so I'll do
Yeah.
Monday, Tuesday of, a good weightlifting set, and then yoga is Wednesday. And then Thursday and Friday is a little more weightlifting. And then I take the weekend off. Everybody's got to have a break. You got to let your body recoup.
Yep.
But just moving, like you keep saying, is just moving. And
Yeah.
yoga has saved me so much. Like, I used to have such bad back problems. I'm only 34, okay, and I
Yeah.
can pull my back pretty quickly if I do it the wrong way. And it's funny because you're talking about doing back bends and things like that. My daughters are in gymnastics, and they've been, mastering their back bends into their
Kickovers and stuff, and back handsprings, all that fun
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
the terminology, the kick over. And I remember I went out there one day and I tried to do a cartwheel. I was like, I can do it. I've been able to do a cartwheel my whole life. Well, turned it out I tried to do a round off instead of a cartwheel. And when I rounded off, I twisted a little bit too much, and
Didn't feel good, did it?
did not feel good. And that was late last year, and that's what kind of motivated me to get back into working out and getting back into making my body right, just getting my body right, because
Yeah.
I started waking up sore as can be, not being able, some days not even being able to get out of bed, and having to forcibly go to work and hurt all day at work. And when I implemented this whole workout, like I went back from when I was, working out in the Navy, and I had actually a notebook that I went through, and I was like, this is what worked for me. And so I took that, what I could do, implemented what I implemented, and my body has felt great. Some days I'll wake up and it's just regular soreness, but my body doesn't feel like it did, the summer last year. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just being able to implement that and make myself feel better, that's what I was wanting. Being able to get out there
Man.
with my kids, not even being able to do a car. I ain't doing that again. I learned my lesson.
Maybe. Hopefully this conversation shifts you, right? Because even a cartwheel, right? Like we got progressions for that. We could take you from learning what muscles need to be in the proper place to then taking a baby step, then taking a baby step, right? You just did the too far too fast, right? So cartwheel is just, you got to take some time if you want to learn
I did a running cartwheel too. That was probably not smart of me.
it.
But I watch my daughters, and they sit there and they'll go through their progressions of, when I was watching them do learn their back bends, and then being able to go from standing to the back bend, they would spread out their legs and go like this and then turn around. I'm like, oh my God, if I did that, I would hurt for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. 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 And you know what? That's one of those signs where, even though little girls are doing stuff that we probably think we can never do, whenever we see something, we're like, oh, I can't do that. And if it's something that's like really challenging, like a cartwheel or a flip or something like that, I understand that. But if you're like, oh, I can't do that, and it's grabbing those dishes from the top cabinet, or like just dropping down to a squat and hanging out in the bottom of a squat, something that requires something that you don't have, that's like the sign, right? That's the sign, like, oh, why don't I have that? Right? It's so important, and that's why we picked fundamental movement patterns to focus people on through Reshape. Is there are things that you should be able to do, right? Like standing up from a chair without pain, being able to do, these contralateral like lunge patterns. Like that's the same as running and walking and going up and downstairs, and learning how to move well through that, holding rigidity through your core in plank positions and push-up positions, Bringing your hands behind your back and doing tabletops, things like that is so important as well for strength and range of motion. And most of the moves that we do too, and this is something that you just mentioned, which I just want to touch on really quick, is people divorce strength or workouts from like yoga or flexibility. And I think that that's a big mistake, right? I think that you can do flexibility movements with strength, and what that does is it actually creates strength in full range of motion. Oftentimes when people, for example, if we just bend forward and try to touch our toes to loosen our hamstrings, and we do this in a really relaxed manner, we might gain range of motion in the hamstrings, but the moment we have to bend over real deep and pick something up and our back is rounded like that, and we go to lift, we have added range of motion, but we never added strength, right? So if instead of bending over to stretch our hamstrings and just doing it passively, what if I grab like a real light weight and I come down into that position, and then on the way back up, I slowly roll up and articulate my spine while I'm activating those spinal erectors? Well, now I have range of motion, probably more than when I was just passively yielding to gravity because I added some resistance, but then I also have strength on top of it, right? So I think that oftentimes people think they have to do flexibility different than training, or like I got to do a cool down, or like these types of things, after a workout. I'm like, well, maybe you just didn't pick your movements right. Maybe you should pick movements that create flexibility and strength and balance and coordination at the same time. So I think it's important for people to look at it and say, how do we get the most bang for our buck? Well, we get it by picking movements that are fundamental to the human body that can facilitate all that. And a bridge is a great example where most people think of a gymnast bridge, fully back bent like a little girl and the arms extended, like impossible, right? And I'm like, well, okay, let's flip you on your belly and let's teach you how to activate your glutes. Then let's flip you on your back and let's teach you how to activate your glutes and your core. Then let's teach you how to lift your hips up in a glute bridge, which most people could probably already get there, but usually they do it wrong and they don't have good activation. Then let's bring you from there to more range of motion through the thoracic spine, and then coming to a half bridge, and then coming to a full bridge, right? And I know that sounds like a quick, solution, but I'll tell you this: if you did this every day for 1 minute, you picked one variation and you did it every day for 1 minute, and you slowly went through our progression, which for the bridge is like 20 something different levels. I'll bet you'd be doing a bridge like your daughter's within maybe a year to a year and a half, right? And your back would feel a lot better because of it, and it'd be a lot more resilient because of it. And I think that's the other misnomer is, with yoga, people think about gaining flexibility, so they want to go do yoga class. And, if you go to yoga like once or twice a week, like, yeah, it's probably going to do something for you. But the approach I've kind of taken is a little different. I'd rather have someone do one thing to focus on one area of their body every single day for like 1 to 3 minutes, or maybe twice a day for 1 to 3 minutes, and see massive benefit from that, than go do like an hour yoga like twice a week or something, right? So if your issue is you have tight hamstrings and it's hurting your lower back, or tight hip flexors or tight shoulders or whatever, like just get one thing and do it every day before you get out of bed and before you go to bed at night, and do that for a month and watch the change that makes, right? It's insane how much progress you can make by just reminding the body, hey, you should be flexible here. Hey, you should be flexible here,
Oh yeah. Stretching before, like even when you work out, stretching before, stretching after, the warm up, cool down. I have an uncle. He's in a wheelchair now, but he still does his stretches every night. And that dude still has full range of motion to most of his stuff.
Yeah.
He's old. He's very old, and so he can't really walk anymore. But he used to play golf. And he was golfing. I think he's close to 80 something. He was golfing up until he was 79 years old.
Yeah, that's beautiful. He's probably walking the whole way too, right?
Oh, he still walks. He just, he can't walk very far.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very tall center man. And I was saying, for the back bend, I'm 6'2", 200 pounds, and my arm span is, I want to say, 6'5".
Okay.
So I got them long, lanky arms, and so I
Yeah.
should be able to do a beautiful back bend. But my back is a little bit getting old.
We got to get you on these WeShape workouts, and eventually, you'll work your way through it and get to that point.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into signing up. I got to talk to Tabby and see if she wants to join in on it, because
yeah, let me know. I'll hook you guys up. We'll get you guys into it. The only thing is, don't do the workouts together. What's funny about this is you can do them side by side, but the way the product works is it customizes to you, right? So
Mhm.
like part of the reason why I wanted to do something like this in the first place, I've had a lot of injuries and I know how difficult it can be to learn how to move your body well and all these things we talked about. And then B, I have these parents who haven't taken care of themselves, and I wanted to build a product that was inclusive in the sense that like anybody can do this. So that's why all of our level ones are like literally, you can do this from bed if you can't even sit up in bed. Like that's the simplicity of the level that we're talking about here. And I create this program to be totally transparent. My partner and I have spent like millions building this product, right? It's definitely it's a very technology driven product. It took a lot of effort to build and to create that level of customization for each individual user. And then, I gave my parents free accounts, and they said, "Hey, what do you want for your birthday?" I said, "I want you to do 100 WeShape workouts," right? I guess all I care about is you guys just trying to live a little bit longer and taking care of yourselves. And then they go do the workout together, which is hilarious because our system is learning from the interactions that one person's having with it. But if two people are doing it and one person's like not doing as far as they could, one person's doing more than they could, like, well, what's the point of this, right? So, anyways, I'll get you guys set up. I would love nothing more than for you to check it out and give it a shot. And I really, really believe in the structure of the workouts and the programming, the philosophy underneath it. Most of my training, even though I might use more tools and do things like that, it's still rooted in this kind of motor pattern progressions and building strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination. And I just see nothing work better than that. And also the beauty of it too is like, man, these workouts are like 30 minutes and you could do them at home, right? So oftentimes one of the biggest reasons we hear people not doing something for themselves, and I still believe underneath that is self-worth, right? But is time. I don't want to go to the gym and drive there and do a workout and like, because they're thinking in their head, I got to drive to the gym. That's 15 minutes. I got to, go in there and warm up. That's 15 minutes. I got to do, my weights for 30 minutes, my cardio for 30 minutes. And then I got to go change. And then, okay, I'm at the gym for 2 hours. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're in and out in 30 minutes with warm up, flexibility, strength, balance, coordination, and cardiovascular, effort all in one shot. And so I tell people, man, if you do 2 of our workouts a week, you're spending less than an hour a week on improving your body's how you feel in your body and your body's abilities. And that's such a small time investment. Everybody can find that time, and if we can get away from pushing too hard too fast and being like, I should do more, I should do more, I should do more, and we go really slow. If you can do that consistently for a year, right? That's 100 workouts in 1 year.
Mhm.
And if you do 100 workouts that are focused on teaching you how to move your body better so that you feel better in your body, oh my God, you are going to finish that year feeling absolutely fantastic. You know what I mean? And most people, it's just like they do 5 workouts a week for a month. They got 20 workouts in. They were doing things that were too hard. They didn't build a strong foundation. And then they stop for 2 months and then they repeat that process. And that happens for decades, right? So stop getting caught in that trap and that cycle of self judgment and doing too much too fast, and just like go slow. Show up for yourself because you know you're worth it and you want to take care of your body and you want to be an old person who can move as much as possible, or you're already in your older years and you want to learn how to move your body better so it doesn't hurt as much. You know, um,
Yeah, and
it's just
so,
you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and do machines and cardio. All this stuff is just it's ridiculous. You don't need to do all that.
right, and so I usually send the links out to these recording sessions about 30 minutes before. As
Okay.
soon as I send that recording session out, I do a little workout session just to clear my mind right before these episodes. And so I'm either in here doing push ups, some jumping jacks, some sit ups, some lunges, things of that nature. I just do a quick workout. And man, the feeling after working out, and the clarity and the being able, the stress level is, drops significantly because to me, I use it as a stress relief as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, you just feel better all about the mental clarity that I get from it because it gets my blood flowing. I'm able to get that little bit of stress that I have out of the way. My nervousness, everything just gets pumped out when I do that workout. And it's just simple things, just a couple things. Used to I'd go down to the gym an hour and a half before and I would really get into it. But now I just got to do a few things, just enough to get
It's
me
beautiful.
the clarity to be able to have these conversations like this. And it's taking it to a whole different level. It's awesome.
That's amazing that you do that for yourself. And I want to present a term to the audience who's listened this far. So if you listen this far, my hope is that what you take away from this is an awareness of how much you judge yourself and that negative self-talk and the way you treat yourself. And you could just imagine yourself like, what would I say to a friend if they talk like that to themselves in front of me? You know what I mean? And like start talking to yourself the way you'd want your friend to talk to themselves, right? Be kind to yourself, appreciate yourself, show up from that place, and then quit exercising mindlessly and start moving mindfully, right? And get after that. And oftentimes, even when we talk about a workout, if somebody doesn't have a habit, then it's too big. It's like there's a mountain out of a molehill, they get paralysis analysis, they don't ever get started. And this term I want to present to you is something that we're going to try to popularize here. We call it movement snacks, right? When you're hungry, you eat a snack, right? So throughout the day, what I noticed myself doing, people say like, oh, how much time do you spend stretching? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really like have too many large blocks of stretching. If I get some time here and there, I'll do it. But then I started realizing I just kind of do like a stretch here and a stretch there and a stretch here and a stretch there, right? Again, these little tools that you get in your toolbox that you can use throughout the day to, maintain and increase your flexibility. Usually a lot of them have strength components in them as well. So you get that strength through full range of motion. And so we call it movement snacks. We're like, hey, whenever you're in the middle of the day, you feel funky, like do a movement snack, right? So I'll give you like one right now. Like, and this is a great way to start because sometimes doing a workout's too much for someone to be able to interact with their own intrinsic self-worth. And so maybe we start with a movement snack and you're just doing it, right? So if you ever find yourself like looking at your phone, watching something, and you got this bad posture, your shoulders are humped forward like this is like everybody, by the way, so don't feel bad about it. One of the best things you can do, and this is something I do like 10 times a day, and I was like, this is one of my favorite movement snacks ever, is just take a moment, sit upright, grab your hands, clasp them behind your back. If you can't clasp them, grab a little towel, and you're going to sit down by your tailbone, and you're going to lift your arms up and lift your chest, and just pull up your chest as much as you can while you look toward the sky, pull your shoulder blades back, hold that for 10 seconds, and then relax and watch. You're going to feel so much better by just taking that 10 seconds and doing that right now, right? So you don't even have to embark on a journey of working out. It's just sometimes these micro things, these movement snacks, these things we do for ourselves to make us feel better that start building that awareness and that self-confidence to say, like, wait, if I do this, I feel good. And if I feel good, I want to do it. And it's a positive feedback loop that then snowballs into, oh, these stretches make me feel good. I'll do some more of them. Oh, these other things make me feel good. I'll do a full workout. These workouts are making me feel good. I'm going to make better food choices. Oh my God, I'm feeling so healthy, except for when I don't sleep. Maybe I should try to sleep a little bit better, right? And it just snowballs, right? Like people look at where I'm at with my routines and stuff, and I could never do that. I was like, neither could I. I wasn't born in a fit body. I wasn't born with like positive psychology, right? I had intense negative self-image, intense negative self-talk. I was overweight. I was super unhealthy. I didn't eat a fucking vegetable till I was 18 years old. That's how unhealthy I was as a kid. I was just mentally against it. I wanted to just self-sabotage and not eating that stuff. And at that moment, I just realized, just like a snap of the fingers, like, what am I doing? Is this who I want to be? Right? And it just changed everything from there. Once you build the awareness, once you start taking baby steps, it builds that snowball, which can keep going. And again, it's trying to get too far too fast. That's a bigger problem than just taking those baby steps and doing that from a place of I'm worth it rather than I'm a piece of shit, so I should do this.
Would you say that's the most enlightening moment of your journey so far?
No, I mean, it was definitely, I don't know, I've had a lot of moments in my journey. That was one very early on in my life that was impactful to me. It was this moment of recognizing I had the ability to choose who I wanted to become. And I think most people don't realize that that's a choice, right? The job you have, the partner you're with, you don't get to choose who your kids are, but you chose to have them. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of people they have low self-worth, and so they tolerate things in their life that make them feel like it validates their self-worth. They have a job they don't like. They have a relationship they don't like. They have a body they don't like. And you got to start somewhere, man. You got to start somewhere and look at yourself and say, wait, this is my doing. And if you can't take personal responsibility, you're probably not going to get very far. But if you recognize that you have the ability to choose who you want to become, then just take a moment and say, who's that? Who do I want to become? And try not to make it like a rich person who's got a great body, because I promise you, I did that and it didn't work out. In the long run, it made me feel shittier about myself. You know what I mean? So try to think of it more from a place of who do I want to serve and how do I want to serve them? If I could help someone, what would I do to help them? And oftentimes if you don't know that, here's my other favorite way to approach it. And this is what I like to tell people now is that are feeling kind of lost in their own life. Like, what's your biggest problem? Solve that. And then go find other people who that's their biggest problem and help them solve that. You know what I mean? And that's such a beautiful way to take our pain and turn it into our purpose. And that's what I've done, without even really being aware of it in my life. It's, being insecure and overweight and then getting injured, all this stuff. It's like when I look back now and I think about what we're doing with WeShape, I go, oh, all that was just school teaching me how to show up for what I'm doing right now. And I get validated in that all the time with the testimonials from our members coming in about how they feel in their bodies and about their bodies. And it just brings me so much joy that I literally don't care if I ever get anything from this. I don't need any notoriety. I mean, obviously I can talk about these subjects well, and that's helpful for spreading the word. But if I could help, a lot of people show up for their workouts as an act of self-care and to improve their self-worth and not focusing on this traditional way of thinking about exercise and start thinking about this new way of what does fitness really mean? It means movement freedom, right? Then I'll know that all those things that I had to go through were there for a reason to help me teach that to others so they don't have to go through that same pain of trying to solve it for themselves. So yeah, that was a big lesson for me, for sure.
That's a beautiful thing. Humility.
Thank you. Thank you.
All,
yeah, I used to have no humility. That's
we could all use a dose of it sometimes. Some of us get too caught up in being big headed, and sometimes life is going to kick us. So we need to learn from that. That being humble and having humility is a beautiful thing.
And life is always going to kick us. Like, Jonah, that's the one thing that I find really valuable about these challenges I mentioned earlier. So like I said, every couple months we run a free challenge and we do like live calls where we present these concepts. And then we ask people like, what have you done to integrate this concept, or what did this concept do for you and whatnot? And what I've discovered through these calls, because usually we'll have 500, 600, 700 people on these calls, and people will share their experiences. And one of the things that I learned that I wasn't expecting was how everyone thinks that their suffering is unique to them, right? Like we think our suffering is unique to us, like, oh, this and that, and like I'm the only one, and I feel shitty about my X, Y, Z. And the moment somebody stands up and says like, whoa, like I've been putting everybody else first and blah, 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 then it's like the other 500 people on the call who like feel the same way are like, oh, I'm not the only one, right? There's this massive epidemic of kind of this sense of loneliness and sense of like, I'm the only one with this problem, and I can't be vulnerable because if I'm vulnerable, then nobody will like me, right? And it's the exact opposite. It's like those of us who are willing to say, I hated myself even though the world thought I loved myself, or whatever things have ailed us over the years. It's the people who are willing to stand up and share those inner dialogues that people don't want to talk about, that give people permission to recognize that they're not alone in their pain and their suffering. And so that's something that I've gotten from that's been really powerful, is just recognizing like people just feel so alone, and they feel like they can't be vulnerable and they can't be real. And like, dude, nothing will kill you faster than lack of authenticity. Again, I'm going back to that stoic mentality. It's like, you got this one life right now to live. And, if you knew how much time you had left, if I told you had whatever, 500 weeks left or something like that, you'd probably make a lot of different choices than if you just lived carte blanche and distracted yourself all the time and didn't think about it. And I think so many people need to get in touch with that side of it, saying, let me make the time I have here count. Let me do something that feels meaningful to me. Let me do something that serves others, because that's the other piece, is serving yourself will never bring you happiness. I promise you that. Serving others is the only thing that will bring you that joy and contentment that I think everybody really wants. It's not a private jet that's going to get you there. It's seeing the smile of somebody who you helped solve their own lack of self-love and pain that you once experienced. That's at least my experience of learning that side of things. So yeah, you're not alone. Anybody who's listening to this, you're not alone. There's people out there that share your woes and concerns. And if you're afraid to be vulnerable to your partner or your community, find a community that you can be vulnerable with that will hold you through that. And that's another thing we do at WeShape. We have beautiful community. We do like live calls, and we just encourage people to show up as your authentic self. And it's shocking to me how many people show up to these calls from around the country, from around the world, and they feel like they can be more real in this, this meeting than with like their own partner, at home. And God, that brings me so much sadness, the people's lack of ability to be their authentic selves.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many of us need to pause and say, who am I? What do I want to be? And just get after that. And if you don't know, try shit. Try shit diligently until you figure out what that is.
Yeah, I think we could all use a dose of that. Taking a step back, moving out of our own way, clearing our minds, and making rash decisions. Something people need to learn. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully, I'm not like leaving on a somber moment here towards the end of the show. I don't want people to like walk away and feel sad. I really wish people would just connect with themselves a little bit more and just say, hey, who do I want to be? Like, why am I not taking care of myself? Right? Like, one of the best practices I ever inserted into my life is the practice of inquiry. Right? If you people hear about meditation, and there's a lot of like challenges when it comes to learning how to meditate if you're trying to clear your mind and have like empty thoughts and whatnot. And so sometimes a better practice for people is just set a timer for 10 minutes and like ask a question and then just wait for an answer to pop up. And usually a bunch of dumb answers will pop up and you'll realize that they're not really the thing, and then just keep asking the question. And if you keep asking the question over and over again, why am I not showing up for myself? Why am I not taking care of, as it relates to health? Why am I not taking care of my body? Right? If you ask yourself that question over and over again for 10, 20 minutes, you'll probably get some answers that feel a little uncomfortable, but if you face them, they're the thing that's preventing you from moving forward. So I love that as a tool is inquiry, just asking yourself questions and giving yourself space to let the thoughts, feelings, and intuition bubble up. And you'll learn more doing that than you will from any book or podcast. That's the other, like we talk about knowledge and everything like that. And I think it's important for people to expose themselves to lots of different knowledge, but you would be shocked at how much knowledge there is inside of you right now if you just sit still and ask yourself some questions and let your inner wisdom speak up.
yeah, because sometimes your mind will pull an answer that you've heard two or three different times in your life that you won't even know you knew the answer to. It's
Yeah.
crazy how your
Yeah.
mind can just pull stuff out. But that's a conversation we could go down another day. That's a deep rabbit
Oh yeah,
hole.
big time. For
Uh,
sure. We could go hours on all these topics, I'm sure.
oh yeah, and we were just about to 2 hours. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
These
I know. I
these
feel like we could go for hours and hours and hours and hours further. So, hopefully anybody listening this far got some useful stuff from this, movement snacks, self-worth and awareness around that. You know, different modalities of how to approach fitness rather than just pumping muscles and burning calories. It's like, again, it's my mission to spread the word that there's a different way, and I think it's a better way. And I think that if you, work towards it, it'll make you a lot happier and it'll make you feel a lot better in your body in the long run.
Yeah, and I feel like this whole conversation it wraps up in itself because fitness is 99% mental. It really
That's right.
is.
Yep.
You just got to get past yourself. Like
Yeah.
I tell everybody every episode, move
Ooh.
out of your own way. Once you
Yeah. Ain't that the
get
truth?
get get rid of that metaphorical lock that you've locked yourself in. Open the cage and just let yourself out. I mean,
Yeah.
and the possibilities are
Yeah.
endless once you get to that point. But
Absolutely. I love that.
WeShape.com, that's the website, right? And everybody can find you on Facebook and
That's right. Are we live or are we pre-recording this one?
pre-recorded.
Okay, cool. That's perfect. So then I'll tell you what, I'll get you listeners a link where they can try it for free. So if they go to WeShape.com/blue collar, that'll give them a link to get in. They can try it for free. They can try the workouts, get on a live call with me, ask questions, and give it a shot. So I want people to experience the difference. And if you don't like it, that's fine too. Hopefully you got some great information from this show. But if you're looking for a workout that you can do from home that follows all the philosophies that we talked about, including a lot of these mental positive psychology things that we're talking about, then go check it out. WeShape.com/blue collar, and I'll see you there.
That's awesome. And make sure you do it because I'm going to be right there with you, doing it with you. And I'm going to make sure to come to a couple of these calls, make sure I'm on the same page. And I look forward to trying it out and getting the wife involved because, the way I work out and the way she works out is totally different. And it has to be that way because my body is not the way her body needs to go. So And
Yeah.
I can't work out beside her because if I say one thing to critique her, she's going to chew my head off, and so she can do it by
That's
herself.
just called wisdom, Jonah. That's just called wisdom.
That's marriage.
Yeah, I've been a trainer, like I said, for a long time, and I've always wanted to work with my wife. She just has a natural ability to move well, a lot of strength and stuff. But there's little things I always want to be like, oh, let's work on this and let's work on that. But we tried working out together when we first got together like 20 years ago, and it was like a no. And then, sure enough, last year she said, I would love it if you could train me. And I was like, holy shit! It only took about 20 years, but here we go. So I'm actually excited that I get to work through that and kind of teach some of these concepts to her, and it's fun. So yeah, maybe like another decade you guys can figure that out, but maybe not. That's cool too.
Yeah, she doesn't like me critiquing her ways.
Yeah.
But,
well, I'm sure you don't like her critiquing your ways either.
don't critique my ways because she doesn't know. But I appreciate you coming on and spreading this knowledge, and I hope for future conversations, and I definitely want to try this, and then afterwards, I can probably get you back on to tell you how I feel about it and all that good stuff.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, I'd love that.
All right, man. Well, I'll make sure to put all the links down in the description to your website, Facebook, all that things, and yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it was a fun conversation. I hope everybody enjoyed it and that you got something to take away from it. And I always tell people this at the end of a good conversation: don't take it all away and run with it, because you'll do nothing. Pick the one thing that feels like it stood out to you the most. Focus on that for a month or two, and then come back, listen again, and see if something else pops out for you. Because if you do that, you're actually going to make some progress.
Yeah, because we had a lot of info coming out on today's episode. So you might have to pause and about a few things, because we may hit a nerve in a couple people's lives like, holy shit.
Hey, if one person changes their approach because of this show, then it's a win. So that's the way I like to approach things.
Oh yeah, the pursuit of knowledge and sharing it is my mission, and that's what I'm here to do. But
I love it.
We'll hit stop here and get everything downloaded, and I'll get you back to being the only parent in the
house. Here I go, back to it.
All right, bye.
Thanks,
everybody.
Brother. It's been a fun.
That's all the time we have for today. Head over and check out our website, thebceshow.com, where you can subscribe to the email list and contact us. But remember to leave us a rate and review. Helps the podcast with that pesky algorithm. Thanks for listening, y'all.